Regular workshop. This is our Commissioner Priorities Workshop on Tuesday, January 19th. It's scheduled at 10. It's starting at 10:15. Do apologize, we had a special magistrate meeting that ran late. So we will call this meeting to order, and the invocation will be led by Commissioner Rawls and the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Pickens. All rise if you can.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, just thank you for this day that you've given us, for the opportunity that we can serve you and serve our community. Lord, just ask that you bless everybody in this commission and all the staff, that we deliberate in good faith and that we follow your word. Lord, just ask that you bless each and every one of us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Rawls and Commissioner Pickens. We're going to start in just a second, but I would like to ask a little ground rules if we can. I think the flow of the meeting will go very well if the commissioners do not debate every item that comes up. I think today what we should do is just look at the items that the commissioners are bringing to the attention. Staff will be taking notes of that, and then we can be bringing that to another workshop where at that point we can decide if it's policy, if where it fits in our strategic plan, or if they're already working on it before we commit too many staff resources to those items. So if that's okay with the board, that's what I'd like to move forward and move that forward ahead and get this cleaned up.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Turner.
Is there a possibility that I could do one of my issues towards the top where I can get Clay back to work? It shouldn't take but a minute or two, and
Be glad to. Let's go ahead and start with Jeff, with Commissioner Rawls on the animal shelter. And Commissioner Rawls, if you don't mind, after you present the animal shelter, I'll ask Commissioner Turner.
If he wants to go ahead and get them out now, that's fine.
Okay, then Commissioner Turner, you have the floor then. Thank you.
real quick, at the last meeting, I explained most of it, where we called a special meeting of Solid Waste Advisory Committee on the issue of the error and omission that was made on solid waste assessment. What we would like to do, if possible, is when the property appraiser's office and the tax collector both agree that there's been an error and omission, instead of having to take that back to solid waste adjustment that's only meets once or twice a year, and usually in the first part of the year, and there's a clear and concise error and omission made, that they can just ask the county administrator to sign off on it. That's the way it used to be. And it got changed somewhere along the way. And then if the county administrator feels uneasy about it, then he can say, I'm not signing this one, you need to take it to the board. So I think that's what we're asking for today, is to let that process change. I think we may have to change an ordinance, I'm not sure. Let Rich look into it and see what needs to be done. I think that would be very prudent and fair to the people who have had the solid waste adjustment assigned to them in error. Anyhow, that's my
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah. Would you like to come up, Mr. Davis, and say anything about that real quick?
Sure, thank you, Chairman Harvey. Certainly, as Commissioner Turner has said, these are solid waste assessments that everybody's in agreement. The customer, our office, the county's in agreement. We've assessed those in error. Currently, all of those are going before the Solid Waste Adjustment Committee, which is fine, except, as Commissioner Turner has said, the Solid Waste Adjustment Committee doesn't meet as frequent as it would need to for these. Especially this time of the year, people are receiving those assessments on their tax bill. They want to pay a November tax bill, but the Solid Waste Adjustment Committee doesn't meet usually until the first of the year. So the customer would like to pay without the solid waste adjustment or assessment, on there. So these are no-brainers really. It's just a matter of who's going to do the certificate of correction. As Commissioner Turner said, the easiest way for that process to work would be through administration, either the administrator do it himself or direct a designee to do it. If that process needs to go before, even as it currently is written, we're of the opinion that that process could be done through administration and then presented to the Solid Waste Adjustment Committee as a consent agenda. Just, these are the ones that we've changed, have them sign off on it, and then move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
So
Chairman.
right now, I think everybody's in agreement to move that forward, so we're going to ask Mr. Commando to look into our ordinance and then bring that back. Okay, good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Rawls, you have the floor, sir. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass it down. Rich, can you hand that to Terry, please? Thank you. This is the most current iteration of the animal services building, and mine's collated a little bit different than yours because mine didn't get stapled, but I don't, I guess what we need to discuss, if possible today, is if you look on this page, it shows the site plan, and it shows the building in scale as it would fit on the site. For reference purposes, is everybody aware of the construction access road that goes back along? So where this starts basically is this corner right here would be where you come in on that access road. And then I'm assuming it would be beneficial to push everything off to the right, but I'm not sure. So that's pretty much where we're trying to figure out is what's beneficial. This has not been given to staff yet, so I didn't know if we should take a stab at it first and give it to them or let them take a stab at it. But they could literally take this, copy it, cut this out and play around with it and give it back to us and we can redraw it.
Go ahead,
If
Mr.
I
Turner.
may,
You
Mr.
may.
Chairman, I think that it should go as close to that, the actual building itself should go as close to the access road as possible.
Okay,
And use everything to the east
okay,
for pens and kennels or additional stuff that needs to be in the future or whatever, instead of having to drive past all that open space to get to the building, would be my only comment. Other than, have you done any kind of an assessment yet to think if we're anywhere close to being within the budgeted amount that we set aside in the
I
Better Place plan?
not really, to be honest with you. I took a look at the kennel last week a little bit. The kennels themselves are very cheap and easy to build if we build them out of just post and frame and post and beam and a metal roof. I haven't really looked at the building yet, but I can get to work on that pretty quick.
Well, I hate to put you out, I know how much effort it would be.
No,
but
it's
if we
really
could
not that
just
much.
kind of do, just a quick overview to see if we're talking about the $750 we got set aside, or if we're gonna have to come up with additional monies or whatever. I mean, that would be the biggest part of it. You know, I think it's wonderful that we've gotten as far as we have in this.
I think the answer is yes, but it depends on what the means and methods are for the building itself. You know, I would be in favor of just a pre-engineered metal building with maybe a nice facade on the front, the sides and the back.
I realize you're in the business just like me, so I'm not trying to, like, show I'm not trying to
Yeah.
do anything here. I'm just saying that when I put a number to it a while back on a metal building versus for an office space, and I found out that you could construct it conventionally for less money because you had to frame all the interior walls of the
Right.
metal building, and where it was more money for the metal building,
I-
especially if you use a
I
red iron
agree.
metal building.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I just built myself a, for lack of better terms, a man cave that's post and beam with metal on it.
Right.
And it was very inexpensive, but when I brought this stuff up in the past, I've been warned about the 15-year longevity, and so I didn't, you know, if that's cool, I would be more than happy to put that out there, because you could put up a post and beam frame, infill with traditional steel studs, and then sheet it with light gauge metal. We could do 26 or 29 gauge roof metal like you see at I can show you a picture if you want to see what it looks like as a finished product.
Well, I'm okay. I'm just trying to find a way that we can get it
That
as
would
close
be
to
very
within
inexpensive.
budget as we could and have a decent building, you know.
I think at the end of the day, we're still good with the $750,000. We only need to have, because the property seems fairly hard out there. I don't think we have to really do a whole lot for parking, except for the handicap accessibility right now. We could do it with some sort of pervious, you know,
Well,
rock
if
or
we got
whatever.
real close, and of course, Mr. Troxel probably fixing to shoot me, but if we got real close here,
stand
we
in the
could
way.
probably do a little bit of site work in-house or something
Yeah.
like that, you know, as long as it wasn't extreme. Maybe, you know, build the access road or something like that, I don't know. Maybe we could even put it on our paved list or something, you know, I don't know, but, so it may be we could do something like that if you got real close on your building costs.
Yeah, okay. I'll start working on a budget then. I've got a spreadsheet I can go down and we can take a look at. And if we use current lumber pricing, it's ridiculously high, but it is coming down. It might actually be to our benefit. So,
It'd be one, if I, one more, it'd be really wonderful if you could just get it to where there was a base comparison to be able to put it out for the design build or whatever the case may be, or, you know, that, to get a basis of bid or something.
well, I'll go ahead and do, I can do typical wall sections, inside and out. We can, you know, put all that out there, and if we go with the CM idea, then the construction manager is going to come to the table with some value engineering as well. But, you know, if we're just doing a post and beam building, that's, and what do we need, 12-foot high? Do we need more than 12-foot high?
I wouldn't think so, not even that,
What height,
probably
what height,
10.
10 and 9-foot ceilings?
Yeah.
And just do acoustical ceilings throughout, so that would give plenty of room for ductwork on it.
Another thing, and again, Mr. Troxel may shoot me, but we have an employee in East Palaca that knows how to do this. She does it on the side, she's very good at it.
You're not talking about Danita Cole.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know you use her too, but so
Yeah.
do I, and
Yeah.
so, you know, I think we can allow her, if we need to keep you from expending personal assets as much, you know, as much as possible. Maybe we could get Danita to meet with you and help you draw or do
Absolutely.
whatever
Yep.
you need to do. I mean, I'm assuming Mr. Troxel will let her do that during business hours, because it's a county project.
yeah. And I think she uses the same software that we're using. So we're using the 2020 version of SoftPlan, but we do have the, all the typical sections already drawn. We just cut and paste. to
Well,
be honest
just trying to
with you. Yeah, but yeah,
keep from you having to expend a lot of personal assets. I know you're
no,
willing.
it'd be
I know
much
you're
easier for me to
willing,
call her
but-
than my wife, so,
but,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it would be, maybe she could help us some or whatever, and that would keep you from having to do it with your personal company
Yeah.
or whatever.
That's cool. So you got, this is what they agreed upon as the left and right kennel plans. And I really haven't studied it a whole lot. This is staff saying that this is what they recommend. If you look at the way it attaches to the building, one request they did have was that there be a breezeway between the building and the kennels, so they don't have to have the barking so proximal to them. So we'll have to eventually define what that length is. And she said if we could just have a chain link fence with a covered walkway with a chain link fence, so they could walk dogs from there into the showing area, whatever.
You know, to keep us from having to have air purifiers in there, because that would give you a smell break from the
Yeah.
kennels to the main office building, yeah.
Yep. So this is what staff came up with. I'm not sure where it sits with the Animal Services Committee yet. I've been trying to avoid that, so I don't want to put any political influence on them. But from what I understand, they have seen this, and they're in agreement. This is the floor plan they like. So,
Okay, Commissioner,
do what?
That's good with me.
Commissioner Ross?
Oh.
I'd just
So-
like to say one last thing if I could.
Oh, okay.
I want to say that I truly appreciate the efforts that Commissioner Rawls has put in this project and took under his wing and got it where it is today. So
I agree.
I'll end mine with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Ross,
Mhm.
or Mr. Turner, when you talk about moving the building closer to the access road and putting are you looking at the kennels facing to the east? Is that what you're looking
I don't really care, Mr. Chairman. I just think it needs to move down
Okay.
to the access road where you have the rest of the 5 acres, where at some point in time you can build horse pens, goat pens, all the other animals
Okay.
that are more of a paddock than a kennel. You know, so you'd still have your kennel space, and you'd also have room in there. I'm assuming at some point, and this is pure assumption on my part, that the animal services people would like to have an area like a little yard out there fenced in, that they could take a dog that they were gonna interact with a customer or an adoptee or adoption
Okay.
person, and be able to go out in the yard and mess with them a little bit and see if they get along. And so I don't know that we have that space yet, but it would be easy if you put everything down at the left end on the
Right.
picture. It would be easy then to have plenty of space to build your paddocks and your play yard and your whatever you may need in the future.
Okay, so what,
No.
I think Jim wants to come up and say something. Yeah, Mr. Donovan?
I think Commissioner Adams' act
Okay.
has is
All right.
likely.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You want to finish?
No, go right ahead, and then we'll go to the commission.
Mr. Chair, Jim Troiano, Putnam County Planning and Development Executive Director. As far as the Animal Control Committee, they are yet to meet. They had a quorum issue, and because of COVID, they haven't met. However, they need to look and make the actual placement of the recommendation of where they feel this building should be on the property. And then they would come back to this board at a meeting in the future to present that to the board to get approval of the board to move forward. So I've talked to Lisa Suarez, and that's exactly where we are, should I say, with that process.
So what we did, this is a scaled
Okay.
version of the building. If they want to cut this one out and move it around here. But I think Commissioner Turner's right. If you land it more proximal to the head of the road, then you've got all that acreage to the east.
I agree.
That's wide open.
So we are scheduled for a meeting, I want to say, first week of February with the Animal Advisory Committee.
Well, please let them know that, and I know Commissioner Hamzat and Commissioner Pickens want to speak, and I don't want to hog the conversation, but please let them know all we did today was look at what Commissioner Rawls has put together. And we're not making recommendations to them, we're looking for them to make
Yes, sir.
recommendations to us.
And this is new, something that you would like be presented, Commissioner Rawls, to the Animal Advisory Committee, which you have? The document you have today?
Yes, this is the proposed site plan. The county survey went out and laid out the 5-acre area. So we now have a defined area. If I could also,
Yeah.
when they're deliberating this, they need to consider that this was designed in such a way that the kennels can be extended, and they're roughly 84 feet each. So that might be might be taken in consideration, that if there was a future need, they could put a small breezeway and shoot kennels off at an angle to the other two. So they just, it's just something, food for thought. They can cut this up and scale it and, have future expansion as well.
Mr. Chair, would Mr. Rawls like to come to the committee and present that? Would
Sure.
that?
Yeah.
I'll send you a calendar invite then for
Okay.
that.
Okay. Mr. Adamsack, you had a question, sir?
Well, Mr. Rawls just kind of addressed it, so I agree with what he's saying, that it's expandable, and then as well as with Mr. Turner, that it gets moved further to left, and maybe even turn it a little bit so that the two buildings face parallel to the 725 line, then parallel to the 300 line, and that gives us the most opportunity to expand the building towards the lines. Just thought, but Mr. Rawls basically answered my question that I had. Another thing I just think as a commission, at some point we gotta draw a line in the sand for when we're gonna start doing this, and we can't just keep going back to the committee and waiting and waiting and waiting. There has to be, I think we should set some sort of date, time sensitive, that says, hey, listen, we have to finalize this and move forward.
If I could say one more thing, or ask a question, Mike, was there any borings done on this particular piece of property, do you know? No. So we probably need to get those going as soon as possible. That'll really define the footings and the foundation for the.
If I may, Mr.
Yes, you
Chairman.
may.
I think most of the problems are not gonna be ran into in this footprint.
Okay.
I think the problems where they had to do the deep concrete stuff and all was around back under the pods and on that side, the new pods. But I think the other area may be all right, but I'm in 100% agreement that we need to go ahead and expend the money and do, because if we find out the soil is unsuitable there to build this, then we need to just stop and start over and move somewhere else or move it over instead of spending that extra 200 grand to do this stuff that would need to
Illegal
be,
piles, yeah.
to do that, either dig it out and
Surcharge.
and
and all.
surcharge it
This
or
is what
do
I would
whatever,
suggest.
so.
Let's get it past the committee, define the area so we're not having to do 5 acres necessarily. We can just do the areas around where the footings would be for the building. Because the kennels aren't going to weigh anything, to be honest with you.
I'm trying to figure out a way to do this because I don't mean any offense to anyone. And I just want to preface that. But at some point, we've got to take this project over and move forward.
That's right.
And so, you know, I think you've done a phenomenal job in this. I don't mind having the Animal Services Committee say, yeah, I think we'd like to move it over, whatever. But the last time the county got all the different departments involved with a wish list, they turned a $200,000 job into a $500,000 job, and you know what I'm talking about. And so by the time that we rebid it and did the negotiation and did everything, it turned out to be a $200,000 job. But I'm just telling you,
Right.
we need, at some point, we need to turn this over to bidding and doing things and just go ahead and move the project forward and get it done and not back and forth, like Commissioner Adams Act said, not back and forth over, do we move it 5 foot this way or twist it a little that way? You know, I think we just need to make some decisions, you know, go back to and inform Animal Services of what we're trying to do, and if anybody has any problems, let us know, serious problems. But other than that, I think we just need to take this bull by the horns and go on and get it done. It's been going on longer than I've been here.
I agree. To be perfectly honest with you, this is the first time I'm really looking at this, because I've not tried to influence this whatsoever. Ms. Suarez and the Animal Services folks came up with this is actually their third, I believe, iteration of the floor plan, and it's completely different than the first two. So, I really haven't studied it. I assume it works well for them.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of rooms, a lot of place for cats.
All
Lots
that's
of room
fine with
for
me,
expansion.
especially if we can do it within the budgeted amount.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. But
Commissioner Pickens, you have the floor.
Yeah, first I wanted to thank Commissioner Rawls for all his efforts, because this thing has moved forward more in the last year than it has in the previous 3 years I was here. And I want to thank you for that. And I do agree, if you can move that building, like you said, towards that road, because I think that was one of the concerns or complaints of the animal control people, is they didn't have areas for large animals and then other animals that aren't, suitable to be put in these buildings. So, and I assume this is all kennels?
Yeah, so what,
If you just didn't draw all the doors there, or
no,
or that,
let me explain the kennel
that
seal.
future expansion?
I should have brought you guys an elevation, but, all right, so when you walk in here from the office, you've got the quarantine dogs over here, and these are typical kennels over here. And if you look closely, there's a post line down here and a post line here, so this whole thing is covered by trusses, right?
Right.
This is the kennel, and this is called a run. And what they propose to do is have a thing called a guillotine door. They can raise it up, and the dog can go outside. This is an area that's grassy, and this is concrete. So if they got to go poop, they can go outside, and they can come back in. But they cannot get, each dog has their own individual run. And these kennels that are larger, I think their intention was for mother dogs that have puppies, they can have the larger kennels. That's why they're otherwise, all these are kennels and all these are runs. And then you have this overhang out here as well, that keeps the rain off of them. That would just be overhang from the roof line.
All right, that's all I have.
I'm good.
I'm good, thank you.
The only other question I have, and y'all are builders, I'm not a builder, is, does it matter east, west, the sun, the north, south, the rising, the setting? I don't know that.
East-west
If
exposure.
you're superstitious.
Well, no, I'm talking
No,
about.
your east-west exposure has to do with heating and cooling, but in this case, you have a fairly square building, and
I'm talking about for the animals, if the
Oh.
afternoon sun was beating down on them from the west. But,
We're gonna be
I
mostly
think
covered.
somebody suggested turn the building, if this is the front of the building and we turn it facing
right,
west, then the animals would be on the east side, which is
The
the
morning
least
side.
amount of, yeah.
right. Well, I'm going to say this. I appreciate you, Commissioner Rawls, taking this bull by the horns and running with it. Ms. Toronto, I want to say this. I do think that when the Animal Services Committee meets the 1st of February, they got to come out with a recommendation, because I want to see it on our board meeting in February, and then we can start boring samples in March and try to get this thing out of the ground. And we have talked about it and talked about it. And I appreciate, let me say this, I understand how government runs slow, but this one's been exceptionally slow, where there's been a big need, and we've had the money sitting there. And no fault of anybody's, but it's time, and we're all going to be happy to go out there and put a shovel into the ground. I can guarantee you
Mr. Chair.
that's going to happen. Mr. Turner?
Could we have the authority, I know we're not making decisions today, maybe move it to the next board meeting or whatever makes you feel warm and comfy, but could we go ahead and get the authority to do the core borings? We're not gonna include them in the construction anyhow, and the whole project depends on if the soil is suitable. So we could get Public Works to hire the person. They got people that they deal with regularly for core borings. Just make sure they don't do 10-foot core borings. Make sure they go at least 30 foot there, and make sure the soil's suitable in the top 30 feet. And if they do, because the unsuitable soil in the back was down 25 feet or something in the back, where they filled that whole side in at one time over towards the wetland area.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think they did fill the side. That's why that big pond's out back. They dug that big pond out back and used that to fill the jail site, and they covered up a bunch of
Organics.
unsuitable soil. But I don't think they did it all the way up there at the end of where we're talking about building. But we need to go at least 30 feet deep there on core borings. If we could get and make sure that the site's suitable, that's gonna save us a couple of months, and we'll have to pay $2,000 or $3,000 or something to get the core borings done. But we need to go ahead and do that, Mr. Chairman, I think.
Then can we do this?
Make a motion?
Can we do this then? Let's go ahead then and, I guess, agree that the building is gonna be proximal in this 1 acre. So we're boring only in that acre.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other thing, I just forgot what I was gonna say. It had to do with, oh, well, I'll think of it in a minute.
That happens to me too, but I usually have to walk across the room.
You want to get up and take a walk?
You said something that triggered a thought, and,
It's okay.
You're younger than he is, too.
All right. Mr. Turner, you making a motion?
I didn't think you wanted us to do any of that.
Well, you know what? This was an agenda item, so I feel very comfortable in doing that.
Okay, I move that we do core borings on the west acre of the property.
And every 30,
Well, yeah.
Okay,
He can, Mike's got all that down.
okay, all right. So we have a proper motion by Commissioner Turner,
Second.
proper second by Commissioner Adamczak. Any further discussion? Jeff, did it come to your mind yet?
yep, go ahead. It has nothing to do with that.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. What I was
Opposed, like
thinking
sign?
of,
Okay.
Mr. Toxel, I didn't look at the survey. I just gave it to my wife and told her to go with it. Did they set iron markers in the corners? No. Can we get them to do that so we can define the construction area easier? Because, all right,
And Jim, let Animal Services Committee know that we're not trying to trump them. All we're trying to do is get these borings in that site. They can move the building where they want to move it as they see fit, but it's the 1 acre to the west. We're not telling them what to do. We're just trying to speed the process up a little bit. Thank you, Commissioner.
I did want to add one last thing is maybe when they have that meeting, because we're not sure that we're going to be under that $750,000, maybe have them prioritize things that, and I hate to be the one to say this, but that they would remove from the plan. If they does happen to go to $1 million or something, where we could plan for that in the future. Because I think the idea of being able to expand on the building and everything else is great, but going over that budget, I don't see that being a common sense thing at this time.
Well, I think you're right, but I also think that the most important thing is the kennels right now. And then we can come off of that with a building, but,
But maybe that carport maybe is the first
Yeah.
thing they would say, let's not do that if
Yeah.
it's close, something like that. And
I think the value engineering is going to come along with that.
just always easier for them to tell us ahead of time what
I
their
agree.
priorities would be
is there
than
any
for us to go
objection
back
to
asking.
using wood?
There's no objection for using
Wood frame, is there any objection using wood frame versus?
No, oh,
Okay.
I think it'd be really nice, especially
Okay.
for the office area, to do like a wood frame with
Yep.
maybe a hardy board covering. or
I can
something
tell you,
like that, or-
we're gonna be in budget.
Yeah,
we can
well, I
do that.
understand, but I think we are too, but
Okay,
you know, especially if we can do that.
yeah, okay.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Rawls. Now, you still have the floor, so you're first up on the agenda for your priorities.
This is where I just take a really deep breath and say, get your pens out.
I've
No,
got,
I have a list, and,
I've got a PowerPoint, so don't be, share what you want to share. That's what today's meeting's about.
so the first thing I wrote was a monument protection ordinance.
Okay?
OIG, I think funding an OIG should be something that we should be looking at. Would like to revisit the tourist development agreement with the Chamber of Commerce, looking at possibly revamping the way we do our tourist development. Look at what some of the other counties are doing that are having tremendous successes with that, like St. Johns County and Flagler and Volusia counties. The same thing with economic development, and right now we're in the process of looking for a new economic development person anyways. $15 an hour minimum wage. I think that needs to be discussed as soon as possible, because it is gonna really hit us hard from the numbers that I'm looking at. And I've been doing some breakouts of our payroll, and we've got quite a few people that are gonna fall underneath that, and when you compound it with all the labor burden in the form of retirement, workman's comp, insurance, it'll be pretty salty. Staffing level and skills, and where that goes to is, if you take a look at buildings and grounds, for instance, from where I sit, it looks like they're understaffed and underskilled. We have our buildings and grounds, the buildings that the county owns and has to operate in for the public use. You know, some of them are in pretty poor condition, and I think we need to really focus on getting someone in. And to this point, the Animal Services Committee, for instance, if we had on staff a person that we could, or if we had an agreement with a general contractor that could come in and work as a construction manager on small projects like that, or, you know, going in and coming up with a solution for the courthouse that's long-term as far as the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and dehumidification, or west of us here, these buildings that need new roof replacement, stuff like that. So just kind of a public building and staffing conversation. Affordable housing. You know, that when you sit through the affordable housing meetings, you hear them talking about the current LHAP, but we're not really under our current LHAP. Our current LHAP expires in 2021, but and I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but there was zero consideration given to anyone that might be looking for a grant. So we'll throw $30,000 at a person's house to fix issues that they're having, and at the end of the day, and I know it's not a taxable value situation, but it does. There is no payback on that. It's all we're doing is giving somebody money to rehab their house or remodel it. Whereas if we were able to help folks out, even our own employees, and give them a $30,000 down payment assistance or $20,000 or whatever it is, and then there's, you know, a restriction on it that it's a second mortgage. They have to stay in the community for at least 12 years. Then it's forgiven. That goes a long way. So the folks that are making, that are on the lower end of the pay scale, will still be able to have an affordable house. And, you know, the $15 an hour is going to hit them harder. The folks that are going to get raised up to $15 an hour are going to be hit the hardest, because everything that they have to buy that they were currently buying is going to cost more money. So it's not going to be they're not going to see a significant increase in their style of living, if at all. They may actually see a decrease. Drainage, MSBU or districts. I think it's extremely important for us to address drainage countywide, and you know, right now it's a burden that our budget just can't afford, but we're having to afford it anyways. And it takes away from so many of the things and quality of life in Putnam County. And, we've all sat through the meetings. Every single meeting, it seems it comes up in one way or another. Substance abuse, mental health, funding within the county, talking about, we already have drug court, but also looking at veterans court. And helping to spur on brick and mortar, so we don't have to transport people out of county. When we sit there and listen to Nancy Russo with SMA, and, we listen to the folks that are transported out of county, that's a one-time transport. And then once they get on the road to recovery, if they have to go out of county for something like Suboxone or Vivitrol or methadone, then they may or may not do that. It may be more convenient to go right down the street and see their dealer. And then getting the folks reintroduced back into the community and trying to figure out how we take the stigma away. And Judge McGill and I had a conversation about this, where you have folks from every walk of life that get wrapped up in this. And then they decide that they want to get sober and get away from it, but who's going to hire somebody that's got a substance abuse issue recently? And so we need to start to figure out how to have those conversations with business owners, willing to take the risk. And he assures me that they're the people you want to hire because they get drug tested. If they're in drug court or veterans court, they're the people you want to hire because they're getting tested every week. There's got to be a way that we can work around the utility franchise fees. We're not able to take advantage of it. I've spoken to Mr. Suggs and Matt Reynolds when he was here. Matt crunched some numbers and said it could be worth as much as $9 million a year. The city of Palatka has a franchise fee that they collect from FP&L and Clay Electric, but we don't, and we're not able to under our current setup. So it seems like if we could maybe dedicate some time to discuss and look into the possibilities of coming up with a workaround if need be. I'm sorry.
Why can't we do that? I mean, could
We're-
we do it on an ordinance change?
We're a constitutional form of government.
You'd have to go to charter to get that done?
I don't know.
Or do a utility.
Somebody
authority
asked me-
Run it under the port?
Remember the question I asked about, is a port authority allowed to be a utility authority? But then the question that I get hung up on is how do you move money from the port authority to the county? It could be, and I reached out to the mayor and I asked him, how does the city have any benefit from having the gas authority? And they have an agreement. So if that's a possibility, I think we should look at that, because $9 million fixes a lot in Putnam County, and that would be recurrent revenue that it's almost a no-brainer. Fire and EMS funding, I had that on my list. That's going to be something that we've really got to get real deep in this year in order to continue making the inroads. And I would highly encourage you to take a look at your payroll, your year January 1 to December 31st, and if you want, I have a copy. I can send it to you. Payroll for fire and EMS and for all the departments. There is an enormous amount of overtime being paid, and it's you're taking an $80,000 position and turning it into a $125,000 position. So that means we can afford to do something, make changes somewhere to encourage people to stick around longer. That conversation, I believe, needs to happen. Roadside mowing, public versus private. I have had at least 5 people reach out to me in the past 2 months wanting to know why it is that we're mowing over trash, and wouldn't we be better off subbing this out? So I don't have the answer. I've asked Mr. Troxel what he thinks, and so I think we should have a conversation about at least doing a study and looking at whether or not it's even viable for us to be in the business, or maybe it's the best way around, but then have a way to get the trash picked up before we mow it.
Mr. Chairman, I know that we're not discussing this much today, but I would like to see that in
Microphone.
I would like to see that discussion come back to workshop again, because I did look into this 2.5 years ago in depth, and there's no way we can sub it out cheaper.
Okay.
I can give you the numbers.
Okay.
But there are some tweaks to that program that I think we could do that would really enhance, such as subbing out certain roads or certain areas except for the main arteries and subbing that out, because they could, all these guys that have a mower or whatever could
Right.
go out and mow those little areas, and it's hard for us to do them with our big tractors and bat wings. I've talked to Mr. Troxel about this a little previously, but I would like to have that conversation, and we need to have it in the next month or two, because then it's gonna be mowing season again, and you can't do this while you start mowing. It
Right.
has to be implemented
And
a
rainy
little bit
season.
ahead of time, where you can get people on board and get them ready and let them do the neighborhood deals, you know,
Yep.
so,
Well,
sorry, Mr. Chairman.
no, you're
but
fine.
And would that
But
not
I do
fall
think we're
under-
fixing to jump on top of each other as we go. I think Commissioner Rawls, you're going to see when I do mine, I've got some of the same ideas. I'm sure other commissioners do. So let's continue
Okay.
on.
Okay, so-
So, I'm sorry. what-
Yeah, on the mowing thing, I agree with what both commissioners are saying. I've gotten a lot of complaints about the trash portion of it. I just want to let everyone know, I did reach out to Joe Wells, and they are writing tickets for people throwing garbage out and things like that. So I think he said they wrote 36 of them. What I asked them is maybe we could do some more public awareness that they are writing tickets and they are enforcing, and maybe that's something we can work in conjunction with the sheriff's office on, where, you know, when they arrest someone for a felony or something, they put their picture out, maybe not put a picture of someone out, but just say, we wrote 3 tickets today for trash, people throwing it out their window or dumping trash. And I wasn't even aware of this, but they actually have a sting operation they do for areas where they repetitively dump trash and things like
Oh,
that.
illegal
So-
dumping, yeah, that's.
So that there is an effort for illegal dumping and trash, and I think we need to figure out a way to partner with the sheriff's office a little bit more to get that out to the public.
Okay,
And Mr.
Commissioner
Chair?
Rawls?
I'm sorry.
Also, maybe if you add in the courts too, you could make the punishment where they have to pick up trash for a certain number of hours if they do get that citation.
Yeah, keep Putnam beautiful. They would like that.
Mr. Rawls? You
All
still
right, I think we need to look at increased funding, as I said, for our departments, but specifically Parks and Recreation. And I wonder if it's not time for us to maybe have a conversation about letting Citizens Group form a nonprofit corporation and be able to manage, like, if you take a look at Francis Field, the folks in Melrose do an awesome job there. They're a perfect example of what citizens can do. Or what's the one in Interlaken that's got the band shell and the Mary Wisham Park? You know, so if there was a group that expressed an interest in coming forward and saying, look, we'll form a nonprofit corporation, we'll sign a memorandum of understanding, you guys pay blah, blah dollars per year, you know, for electrical or whatever, maintenance, and they actually provide the maintenance, and operate the fields. Jacksonville has done this, and they've done a really good job of it, so you end up with these athletic associations, and they're able to host tournaments, you know, raise money in different ways, but it takes the burden off of our staff from having to deal what we're dealing with right now with all these different fields.
I agree.
So, community development district discussion, I think, you know, at some point, not super high on the priority list, but I've spoken to Mr. Commando a little bit about this. I think that if we could start educating ourselves on community development districts, how they're set up, how they work, you know, in places like St. John's and Flagler and Clay County, they have community development districts that are put in place to raise money to put in roads, sewer, all the infrastructure. Then when the developers come in, they have to pay CDD fees, or they have to raise the money themselves to put in the roads, the infrastructure, and all that. So if you set up a community development district, in lieu of using impact fees, and my personal problem with impact fees is that the impact fee money has to be spent relatively in the area of impact. So if there's a house built in Flora Home, and you have 10 homes built a year there, that money can only be used for school buses, for sheriff's deputies, whatever, for that area. And right now our development is so scattered, and we have a lot going on in the county, but it's so scattered you can't really target any one area and do anything meaningful. But if you had community development districts, then the folks that buy and build in that district are paying for the roads that they're living on, that they're gonna be occupying and using, whether they're paved or not. That it's their responsibility in those districts. And then,
Can I just ask a question on that?
You can.
So why couldn't, is there a way, and I don't know anything about this subject really, because I'm not a developer, but is there a way that we just do that by district, right? So if, and I don't know if I'm in favor or against impact fees, because it just isn't, I'm not a developer and I don't pay impact fees, I guess. But is there a way to do it by district instead of by locality, like, you know,
Well,
Florida Home, maybe it would be District 4, that money would have to be used in District 4. If it was in Hawthorne,
that's what I'm
Proper.
saying, we would have to,
but do we have to really do that, or can we just say it's by our voting district?
That's
just-
actually an
just
all-day
remember-
discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, let's get a presentation on
Yeah.
that as we go forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I
My
would
goal
love to see
today,
that.
though, is to get everybody's ideas out again, go to a workshop, and then let the board rise everything up that we want to work on. Go ahead, Mr. Ross.
engagement with the city of Plaquemine talks to promote tourism. So I think that from a tourism perspective, and I've given quite a bit of thought to this over the past 6 months or so, and, you know, because everything's been real flat, but for Putnam County, Plaquemine seems to be the epicenter right now. And as Plaquemine goes, the rest of the county will go. So you've got a group that's trying to revitalize downtown Palatka. I think that the more that we can do to engage the city and work with the city to promote tourism, not just, you know, because whatever they do helps us out, obviously, but it just seems like a lion's share happens inside the city limits. So work with them and engage them and have some sort of open dialogue about that and getting that agenda pushed forward if they're willing to do it. I obviously can't speak for the city, but it seems to me that as we start to recrank the economic engine, and now some of the states that were shut down are starting to come to the table and say, we need to be open fully, I think it's going to release eventually you're going to have a flood. And we are Florida. We are rural Florida. That's two things people are looking for lately for some reason. And I think that we could take full advantage of that.
Yep, I agree.
Get people the ability to get away from the big cities and come out and go to festivals and fairs or whatever. What was it? Review interlocal agreements with cities regarding roads, and et cetera. And this comes about as our last discussion about St. John's Avenue, Palm Avenue. Is that, a city road? Is that a county road? And I know we're responsible for most of it, if not all of it, but, should that be our responsibility? So I think we really should take a look with not just with the city of Plaquemine, with Crescent City and Larkin. To be honest, I'm not even sure what interlocal agreements we have with them. We've got to figure out a way to reduce the duplication of services that we have in the city limits of Palatka. The enclaves, when I worked for the city, it drove me nuts as an employee for the city, but nothing has changed. And there's got to be a way to get the county and the city to the table to sit down and have a meaningful conversation to either square off the city limits or having them provide the services. Because, if you look at Stillwell Avenue, for instance, when you turn right on Stillwell Avenue, you're in the county, and yet because you're leaving the city limits momentarily, but then you turn left on Pontiac and Stillwell, or Pontiac and Cobalt, and you're right back in the city. And then if you drive out far enough, you're going to drive into a city fire station. But there's those little pockets that just drive everybody crazy, and I wonder if there's not a way that we can get the city to the table to have a conversation about fixing that.
Mr. Chairman, we've had that conversation previously, and that's another all-day conversation
Okay.
that the city would need to be there with us.
Right.
Because, we've had, I think their last,
Our last joint
quickly, their last offer was that we paid all the taxes that for what it would cost them to be in the city as a county, and then they would offer them services. That was the last,
We pay all the what taxes?
that the county pay all the property taxes that they would pay if they were in the city's portion of it, and then they would be happy to offer them services. That didn't fly very well with the commission that day, and so,
That evening.
that was the last conversation that we had had with them that I know of.
Well, there's gotta be a way that we can get together with the city and make things work, because right now, as we speak, the Palaca Gas Authority is extending their gas lines out.
Everywhere.
The city of Palaca could be extending their water and sewer out and servicing our customers. There's gotta be a way that we can have a conversation, say, look, every customer you have in the county, we'll help, what if we put the water and sewer lines in, and you collect the revenue and then pay us for doing that? They have a utility authority
Like I
already
said,
set
I'm not
up.
against it. I just say that's another all-day
Right.
discussion. I mean,
Right.
so many different facets that go along with that. It's not just as simple as, let them incorporate
No,
all
I
of them in.
agree.
Because
It
the
just-
people have to agree to it. There was some kind of a deal that they told me that they have to agree to it. Well, somebody that lives in a city block, in a certain city block that's an out, one blot or two in a certain city block that haven't agreed to be annexed into the city, I don't think they can make them annex.
No, yeah, if they're not contiguous property lines, they can't. And what's good or bad, no matter how you wanna look at it, if
They're
it's already,
surrounded by city.
yeah,
Well-
the city's built
All right.
out.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr.
There's
No,
no,
you're fine.
there's
That's
no
all they
opportunity
do.
for a developer to go in the city and say, I'm gonna take this chunk of land and build a bunch of houses. It's already built out. So we're talking about just very small areas, and I haven't talked to the city commission about it. Maybe
We
I
had
can talk to
real
them at
quick, and
CRA.
I'm gonna break my rule. We had a joint meeting with the city, and the mayor kind of folded up his books, and, because when we said, this is your thing to do, it's not us, we can't force you to do it. But we encouraged, and I might have spoken out of term, but they weren't willing to do that. Now, there was a push on by the state legislators to make these municipalities clean up their boundaries.
Okay.
Hopefully that'll gain some traction, because truly, the city of Palaca needs to clean up the boundaries, so there's no doubt about it. But Commissioner Rawls, you still have the floor, so
yeah.
continue on with your item.
Okay, expansion of the city utilities in the county. So my understanding is that the city is at less than 40% capacity. If that's the case, then going down Highway 19, going out St. John's, out 20, up 17, there's the ability to add on to their system and not have to spend, not have to have us go into the water and sewer business necessarily. So I'd like to see a conversation with the city about the possibility of that. But I also want to see an economic gain for the taxpayers in the county. It's not just, it can't be a one-way street. If we're going to give them the easements, give them the right-of-ways, and if we pay for the infrastructure, there's got to be something on the backside for us as well. But I think that would help for future development. If somebody came in looking to develop in the Francis area, there's no incentive whatsoever for the city to push their lines a little bit. And we're talking, they're already there. They don't have to move them very far, and you could have that going on. So that's it.
Good, good, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Staff, did y'all get that? Most of the,
Yes, sir, we got notes on all that, absolutely. And
do we
if
need to take a break?
if we can take a 3-minute break,
Take a
that'd be great.
3-minute break.
Was I that long?
You did fine.
Only an hour, that's not bad for you.
We're going to call our meeting of the regular workshop of the priority for the commissioners back to order. And Commissioner Rawls, I appreciate your list of things that you want to work on, and appreciate the discussion, the limited discussion that we did have, even though it was necessary. Commissioner Adamczak, you have the floor, and you're next, sir.
I guess my number one priority would be, and actually they're not by any rank or anything, but the first one I had written down here is basically finding means to get the public to participate more with us as a commission, whether that's evening meetings or going around town and doing forums or however we do it, but to get more participation from the community so that we're aware of what they want. OIG obviously is a big one. We really don't have the decision-making power on that, but to get that feedback from Matt when he comes back from that session he's gonna have. And
Explain that one, please.
Office of Inspector General, OIG. Matt is going to a conference, I believe, in February to find out more about that, and I think his plan still is to present to us. Budgeting, that's something that, and not that we don't do a good job of budgeting, but maybe to have more of a plan for 1 year, 5 year, 10-year, ongoing things. And maybe that's as simple as taking this year's budget and plugging into the next 3 or 4 years with the things that we know are coming, and just so that we have a template. Road maintenance, Jeff already talked about that. I kind of added on to that. The biggest complaint I'm getting, actually, and I was surprised, is the garbage over the grading and the other stuff. So it just is I didn't expect that per se. For me, a big one is blight. I think we need to focus on homes that basically are unoccupied. And, there's a lot of them out there that are sitting there where you can look from the front door and see through the backyard. I mean, we need to get those out of our landscape if we expect to be able to grow our county in any meaningful way. Not only the EDC and TDC contracts, but I think we should be reviewing all of our ongoing contracting services, on at least a 3-year basis, and maybe pick apart anything that's older than 5 as a starting point and work our way backwards. But as a commission, I think we should always be looking at reviewing things on an ongoing basis. Fire Services Committee, this is something I brought up in the past. It was part of what they asked for when that prior committee did. This is not one that is to do what the purpose of that one would be to do. It would be more to do just ongoingly watch what's going on and provide extra recommendations, and would be a partnership between the fire departments, volunteer, professional, and some citizen committee on that committee. I'd like to see that be an ongoing standing committee. To be able to track, I know we're working on it, but to be able to track better the attendances of all of our committees and when they meet, and to have that be something very simple where we can click on something and see these are the people that meet when. That has progressed since I've been here, and I appreciate that very much. The fair, I think it's important for us to support the fair occurring this year. And some of these have come up just because of recent articles and things, and I do like the idea of doing this type of meeting, maybe on a quarterly basis, just to allow us to update them, because there's new priorities that occur based on current events. One example would be the current school district plan. We don't have oversight into that, but I think we should have awareness and potential input to help them with that plan. And I know, Mr. Harvey, I appreciate that you have been doing some of that. I chose not to, and I guess I have a question on that, and I chose not to go to the meeting you were at because I didn't want there to be a perceived conflict. I was invited to it by the people in the community of Melrose. And I would just like to know if there's a way we could, if one of us gets invited, or any of us, to something in their location that think the other rest of us would like to attend, that we find a way to get that published in the public. And I understand that one was very short notice, so that wasn't possible. But I did have to tell a lot of people that I couldn't be there for that reason. I just didn't want to have that conflict. Not that there was, but didn't want it. I think one thing that we could do in this county, and it's something we should talk about overall, and it may be a combination of the EDC and TDC groups, whatever that ends up being in the future, is to me, I've lived here for only not as long as the rest of you, for about over 5 years now, but I don't feel like we have a marketable identity as a county. I think that's something that's really important. The strategic plan's good. All these other things we do are great. But what are they marketing? when they go out to the other areas and stuff about the county. There needs to be a consistent message, a consistent phrase, just like any marketing campaign where you stick with that for long term, and maybe that's revisited every 3 to 4 years or whatever based on the changes in the community. But having a marketable identity for our county would be great.
We're 45 minutes from everything.
Yeah. I think that has its advantages, but I think there's more that we need to go into that, but that's, again, it's something we should talk about. IT is an infrastructure item, instead of looking at IT as something that is just a needed thing, I think we need to look at it as an infrastructure item, similar to roads and everything else, because without proper IT, none of the groups could do what they need to do every day.
You saying IT within the county government or IT?
Yeah, IT in the county government, where we look at it more of an infrastructure item than a reactionary thing that because we had something happen, a meeting didn't happen because something was down, where we look into hardening that. And part of that, I've had a little bit of discussions with the IT director, is around establishing protocol for him as far as, and I don't know what we have, but as far as what recovery point objectives are, recovery time objectives, there's things in IT that are very important that basically you could have cost savings. If the need is, let's say my email went down, the need wasn't for me to have that up for 4 days, that's cheaper than if the need was to have it up in 10 minutes. And those are things I don't know that there's real clear direction on from the IT perspective. Or if it's clear direction, it's not documented. So maybe documenting some of that stuff. Public-private partnerships, this is more not the citizens, this is more with different businesses, different people looking to come into the county. Some of this would be done through the EDC and TDC, obviously, but I think we need to increase our awareness of public and private partnerships and expand that to different groups in the county. There's some that are obvious, and there's other ones that we don't even know occur. Kind of touching on what Jeff said briefly, the partnership with our other municipalities, not just the city. We got Weelaunca. There's a lot of smaller communities that feel left out a lot, and I think we just need to increase our awareness that they exist and increase our partnership with them, whether it's sending one commissioner to their meetings to watch or whatever we come up with. But I think we definitely need to partner with our other communities. And that's really all I had.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Adams. Commissioner Turner, you're next.
Everything I has been covered pretty much. Some things I'm for and some things I'm absolutely emphatically against. But we'll hold that up until we discuss them later on in other workshops. So the only thing I'm going to bring before us today is another issue concerning the Solid Waste Adjustment Committee. Last year, we had a category that basically you didn't have to pay the solid waste adjustment for this year, but you had to have an inspection done before you didn't get the next year's. Well, in the past, the property appraiser's always done these inspections. They don't go out and do inspections on properties every single year. It's usually multiple years in between when they do the inspections. I would like to have the approval from the board to assign that task to Mr. Siafi's department, and he can either give it to a building inspector or he can give it to a codes enforcement inspector or whoever to run by and look and see if the same situation that they were granted the non-assessment for last year still exists. In other words, if somebody moved in the mobile home, has somebody moved in the house, or the house that wasn't considered livable last year, did somebody fix it up? Just there's reasons, and I talked to Sarah about it this morning, and Herbian, and she said that she could easily make a list there's only 20, 30 of them or something, and she could easily make a list of why they were granted that exception last year. So somebody could go by and look and see if that exception still remained for whatever reason. Then when it comes to the Solid Waste Adjustment Committee, somebody has went out and looked at it. And so you can't make that determination without somebody looking at it, and the property appraiser doesn't have the staff to do that because they spread their inspections over a period of years. They don't look at every property every year. So that would be, I talked to Mr. Cioffi, and he said that he could handle it, and I'd like to try to do it on a trial basis. I know we're not trying to do anything today, Mr. Chairman, but I need that done because we're fixing to meet solid waste adjustment pretty quick, and we're gonna need those properties inspected, or there's no need in meeting. So, did I cover everything, Sarah, that you needed me to cover? Okay.
Okay.
So, if we could get the authority to let the building department take care of those inspections on a trial basis to see if we could get it done, I'd appreciate it, sir.
Do you need that done today, or can?
If possible, where they can go ahead and start looking at them.
Concur.
All right. All right. By consensus, we're going to do this on a temporary basis until,
Yeah, I'd like to see if it works out, and then I'd like to have another discussion with Mr. Cioffi to see how big of an impact it was on his world. And if it's not, then maybe we could continue it in there's not that many of
Right.
them. But the problem is they can't be done until like a month before the next committee meeting, because to see if that exemption still exists or the reason they did. So you can't do them like throughout the year, because then it'd give them time to do something different that would get rid of the exemption. So
when is your next solid waste committee?
it's within the next month or so, isn't it, Sarah? Yeah, but we were going to in January, but we haven't yet. So I would say within the next month, I'm gonna get with the committee members.
Okay. Jim, do you have anything you want to add to that? Because I think it's a great idea, and if it's only 20 or 30, it shouldn't take very long to get that done, a week or maybe a few days to get that done.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't know that. Mr. Cioffi knows his staffing best. So if he thinks that he can do that on a trial basis, we'll
Talked
certainly
to
look
him
at it.
before the meeting, and we both agreed it would be best to do it on a trial basis to see how big of an impact it would be to his department. I apologize for not coming to you with it. I understand
okay.
the hierarchy, but I caught him, and so, anyhow, I agreed that if it was okay with him, we'd do it on a trial basis to see if the impact was really great or whatever, and, if not, then we'll go ahead and start.
Well, Mr. Chair, where would we get the information from? Who would supply it to
Sarah.
Mr. Cioffi? Sarah?
She's gonna do you a list that has the name, the address, and why they were granted the exemption last year, because there's all kind of reasons why. And it ought to be simple enough for somebody to basically drive by, in most cases, just drive by and look at it to see if that exemption still exists.
And the exemption will be listed, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
We'll look at it, and I'll
What-
talk to Mr.
Wait a
Cioffi
minute,
today.
before we go too much further, what would cause someone to get an exemption? That there isn't a structure on the property?
Well, let's say, for instance, yeah, there wasn't a structure,
Okay.
but then they get an exemption for a year because it's an unusable structure. No windows, no doors, the roof's caved in. It may be a code violation, but it doesn't generate a solid waste assessment. So what we've got to make sure of, and in that case, if it was a good enough structure that it possibly could be fixed up, but clearly is not livable at the moment, then we may give them the exemption, or that committee may give them the exemption. But but only give it for a year. A lot of them, they're like, the structure's gone now, they get the exemption forever. That's just gone because there's not a livable structure on there anymore.
Or
But-
the one in Crescent City we heard last year where the lady had a structure in her property that had a bathroom and a kitchen in it, but she was using it as a warehouse. Remember that one? And she said, you come look at it, it's just a storage building. And we said, well, if you take the sink out, then it's no longer functional. So,
Yeah, and that was the one that we had 50, 60 of them last year in all different scenarios, and a lot of them are definitely code violations, but they're not accessible for solid waste, but they're fixable. So in other words, there's no electric, there's no nothing, it's a mobile home, they're using it to store stuff in. That's a code violation from day one.
Correct.
But does that mean that we charge them an assessment? It's not a livable structure. So, I mean, those are the kind of decisions they make, and some of those need to be inspected to see if it's still going on. Do they get it again this year, or do they have to pay it because they made it a deal? So somebody's got to go look at it.
but I do think, just put this out there, that if somebody comes in and says they want an exemption for a mobile home, for instance, or an unusable building and it turns out to be a code violation, we should immediately start pursuing that as a code violation to get them to remedy
I don't disagree at all, and that's part of what's going on here, is the property appraiser didn't turn them in for code violations when they went and inspected.
Okay.
But when the building inspectors and the code enforcement people go and look at it, if
I
it's
got you.
clearly a codes enforcement issue, it would move into a code situation where that's why it would be best to go this route if we could do it, and so.
Commissioner Turner, I have another question.
Yes, sir.
What triggers someone, I know they have to fill out an application to get this solid waste fee taken off their taxes, is that correct?
That's correct. They
So
fill
is
out
there an application fee for that, or is it just okay, I guess my point, everybody can see where I'm going here, is that we're fixing to spend staff time, and I don't mind on this time, but if we're gonna start looking at it in the future, where we got staff time going out to inspect, there should be something attached to that to recoup those funds that are coming. It's only
I
fair.
don't disagree, but there's also got to be a break in there if the inspection is because, and they haven't violated protocol.
Right.
And they haven't done anything wrong, I got a lot of heartburn charging them a fee for us to go look at it and make sure they haven't done anything wrong.
And the thing is, we have inspectors that are out in the county
Right,
anyway,
right.
so
Yeah.
make it
Right.
convenient when they're out there doing inspections that's proximal.
Or they can attest that nothing's happened, no building permit's been pulled. There's things we could do internally
Correct.
that could solve those financial.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if the commission would allow this program to go through this
Yeah.
year, laid into it, then
Tweak it.
after Mr. Siafi goes through this, first cycle and sees how big an impact it is and what have you,
Right.
then we could come back at then, and if we need to try to assess some kind of fee or whatever, we need to be careful how we do it. 'Cause
Right.
like I said, I have a hard time charging people to do something that they
I
don't
hear
have to do, if you know
I
what
hear
I
you.
mean. So,
But I think there's safeguards built in. So
Yeah,
are
yeah, so-
we good with starting a pilot program? You understand
I'm
what
fine.
needs to happen?
So you want us to report back at the next, at a 1-month interval?
no, sir, all you need to do is compile the information for the Solid Waste Adjustment Committee. And then once we get through this, between now and next year, we need to workshop this issue once you've gone through it and find out what impact it was on your department. May not be that big an impact that we can just go on and continue doing it. If it's a big impact, we may need to figure out how to add some kind of a fee or something.
I understand.
Whatever.
So we would be reporting, we're gonna do it on a 1-month basis? No, we're gonna do it on a yearly basis for 1 year.
Yeah,
That's
one
what you're
year,
asking
just
for.
before the Solid Waste Adjustment Committee, that's when it would be. And the only ones you have to inspect that I'm aware of are the ones that we gave an exemption to last year on a 1-year basis.
I got you. Okay, I got it, Mr. Chair.
Not that many of them.
Okay, very good.
Everybody concur?
Yep.
Okay. All right, you got your marching orders on. Mr.
Good
Chairman,
for me, thank you, sir.
you done?
Done.
Commissioner Pickens, you have the floor.
I don't have a 14-page PowerPoint.
I have 22 pages.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Harvey. First, I want to say thank you for all the commissioners for all their concerns, because there are a lot of mine also, there's no question about that. Staffing level and funding of departments, that is key, and probably the main one, and I don't want to single Mike Troxel out, but probably Public Works, because we all are impacted by, what Public Works can do, from the mowing to the road maintenance to the ditch cleaning. We need all of that, and I truly believe we're in a period of where we're going to get a lot more rain than we did in the past, 20 years. So the drainage issues are much more important. So definitely staffing levels and funding there. If you touch on EMS and fire services, with the new organizational chart, I believe that, having these new department heads are in place, I think that's going to help. And I'm sure that JR, one of his concerns was overtime. He's shaking his head, so I definitely will work on that. But funding for the EMS and fire service is definitely going to be an issue coming down, as we move forward. Parks and Recs, I believe they're underfunded also, and so they need more funding. But we need to find out exactly what their needs are, and hopefully, we're working with Kevin and his staff, and being on the Park and Recs Advisory Board, that hopefully we can get some input from them about exactly what they need to to make the parks a little nicer, not just to throw some money at him. Let's see. Blight, you touched on blight. That's definitely an issue. I do believe that codes enforcement is working as hard as they can to do that, and I think the program that Buddy Goddard implemented where we're taking some of those properties and we'll be able to get rid of them and put them back in there to be able to clean up properties, I think that's helping also. As far as this commission, there are a couple of things that I'd like to continue working on. I know it's been a slow process, but I'd like to continue working with Jim Triano and Kevin Stevens and David Gerardin on the feasibility of the park in Georgetown. I don't have any more information since the last meeting, but we'll meet again and get with water management and just see. But I think we're about to the point where we're going to need a plan of a footprint to see exactly what we're going to have to do with mitigation and what type of permits we're going to need moving forward with that park. And if we can't do a boat ramp, which is what the majority of the people in South Putnam want, and I think the commission agrees with that, if we could look at modifying the management plan, and also if we can't afford to do the boat ramp, is to maybe put in the hiking trails and some of the other amenities like a dock out there where they could fish or actually, bird watch and things like that. So that's one of the ones I'd like to continue working on. As you talk about our relationship with our municipalities, South Putnam District 1 is a little different. We have 3 municipalities. And I have met one time with the 3 mayors, and it was a really good meeting. We met for about an hour or two, and a lot of the concern were the interlocal agreements. I've reached out to Mayor Sands, Mayor Finscala, and new Mayor Michelle Myers, and we plan on meeting in February. And I know that's going to be on the top of their list. But these interlocals with LACA, Pomona Park, and Crescent City have not been looked at in a number of years. So those are one of the things I want to look at there. Also, I've been put on the AHAC committee, so hopefully we can move that committee forward. We are going to meet quarterly, and it looks like it's a really good committee, and I think we're really working well with Guardian. We submitted a report where we're catching up on 15, 16, 16, 17, and 17, 18 as far as affordable housing with the SHIP program. Jeff, I believe you touched on this. I know that most of it we've been giving money to people to fix their homes up, and that is a good thing. For me, I'm for home ownership, so if there is a program that could work with, I believe, the LHAP with the SHIP program to get assistance to purchase a home, I think that's a positive there.
I can get you in touch with a lady named Lanny Lowry, who would be willing to, she's expressed an interest and willingness to come in and speak to the commission. I became introduced to her through Bill Lazar from the St. John's Housing Partnership. She tells me that we actually can go in and modify our quote-unquote current LHAP, but the problem that we find ourselves in is the LHAP that we should be working under that expires in 2021, we can't do anything with that money until we expend the money for 16, 17, 18. So the 19, 20, 21 LHAP, which is what we're trying to get to, we could modify that LHAP right now, put the language in there, send it to Florida Housing Finance Corporation and get them to approve it. Then when we did get to the 2021, we could expend those monies. And I'll give you an example. I had a county employee that came to the day asking, looking at building a house. I immediately called Lanny up, and she started going through the paces. USDA has money to lend with families that have annual household income of less than $43,000 for 2 to 4 people in the household at 2.25%, 100% loan to value. That is an excellent deal. And if you compound that with a $20,000 or $30,000 down payment assistance, all of a sudden she goes from $150,000 mortgage to $120,000 mortgage, and you got somebody that's stuck in the community or going to stay here for 12 years. I'd be glad to work with you on that if you have any questions. I'll give Lanny your number if you want and ask her to reach out to you. I can tell you right now that if you think listening to me is like drinking from a fire hose, wait till you talk to her, because
Well,
she worked for Housing Finance.
Okay, I do want to say our SHIP program does allow for down payment assistance.
But it's
So,
not in the
but
current
I
LHAP.
know, I realize that.
That's the problem. So we could modify
I
that.
think it is, but we're going to have to, yeah.
It has $0, but if we modify the
Well-
LHAP, which is just us having a meeting and doing it, But I would love it
I
if
think
you
it's
could
on
get,
a few of the radars here today. So
Yeah.
go ahead,
I think it limits the current one limits your economic, what you make per year too, doesn't it? I just read it recently when I got it from the thing.
the
So I
19,
think
20,
that-
21, or the
right.
16, 18?
That amount could be moved out further where someone that makes a little bit more money would qualify. I think
Correct.
that would be a good move, potentially.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Pickens?
That's all I have.
All right, good.
I'll give Lenny a number if you want.
All right.
Okay.
Then it's my turn.
Do we need another break
No,
before you
you'll-
get
How many
started?
trees did you kill?
You'll be fine.
You know, they have these things called
Ashley?
touchpads, iPad.
You look so serious on it.
I know, don't I look serious here?
Pad, you could've
We're
got
gonna
it-
go ahead,
Is that a selfie?
Could've got it placed on
I
there.
could've,
You
but,
could've whatever, yeah.
they were off
I
yesterday.
think that should be the front page of the newspaper right there tomorrow.
Well, do not encourage that. Remember when I first got here, though, I couldn't get the picture changed for a while. So, okay, I'm going to start right into my presentation on page 1. Broadband, internet, fiber, we've kind of talked about that. The board is currently working with our Association of Counties, Small County Coalition, and the Chamber of Commerce, Regional Planning Council to look at this. There's good things coming to Putnam County. I can't share all that right now, but when I can, I will. And I think that, I know that people are looking at us for broadband internet. It's not about not having it, it's about not being affordable, not being reliable. The next thing I want to talk about, and I'll throw the hand grenade in the room, and I don't mind, because I want to have these conversations. Actual cost versus projections. MSBU's, when we started them many years ago, and I give credit to Kevin Dersher, Commissioner Dersher, for doing that, but they were never indexed. So the money has stayed the same on those with costs going up and services being cut. I can tell you that Mr. Troxel loves the MSBU process because it really takes a lot of burden off of him. Please forgive my spelling. I thought I hit spell check on some of these, but it didn't catch it. Building department, minimum set fee to start the process. I have talked to Jim and John about this, and then billing by actual job. I don't like the fact that taxpayers are supporting some of the building fees in there. And I think we need to look at that. I'm not building a home. Why should I support someone who is building a home? We don't have impact fees. I'll just stop right there, and because I know that's going to cause some kind of controversy in the future, but I think we need to have that conversation.
I don't understand that. We currently have, I mean, I'm building a house and I just spent almost $4,500 on permit fees.
General fund is supporting the building department.
Not as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I agree, but I think going into,
Bought a truck or something with
yeah,
my
and
money.
I agree with that, Mr. Rawls, but I do think going into the future, we've got to have a talk about, you know, who's using it and how we're using it. Water and sewer rates, the same thing. General fund supporting that. I think we do need to use loans from our general fund. You know, when I first got here, the landfill was going to be sold. As you well know, part of it was going to be. I fought very hard, but the question was, how do we get the money out of that enterprise fund, bring it to general fund? Well, that was going to, if you don't have a capture back program, you really can't do that. Kind of like capital gains, if you will.
I'd settle for break even.
Well, I realize that, but I think we got to start using some tool that when those funds when that fund becomes solvent, we have a way to capture that money back in the general fund. We
Oh,
realize,
okay, you're saying, so we're lending now, eventually the money comes back retroactively?
we're not lending, I don't believe we're
I know,
lending.
but you're saying that it would
But we need
be
to
a
change.
payback.
We need, yes.
I got you. Okay.
Not lending it, and landfill ain't upside
No,
down.
landfill's
No,
not
he's
upside
saying the utilities in East Palatka, I got
down.
it.
No, the
Okay.
landfill's not upside down. You're going to I'll get to that in just a moment.
If I may make one quick comment, even on the sewer and water, it's always been the deal that we're gonna have to invest a little money to have the infrastructure in areas where it's gonna take place, wherever that is.
I agree.
So you're not gonna, if you start loaning it to it, where sometime in the future, then it will make money. Somewhere down the road, it will make money. But if they already are so far in debt that down the road they got to pay that little bit of money instead of expanding their system, our grandchildren will still just be paying us back instead of using the profits to expand the system.
Gotcha.
So we've always agreed there's gonna be, you know, an investment in that system.
And I like the term invested in the system, and we need to call it that, but we don't need to be subsidizing general fund.
But I don't have a water bill in East Palaca, but I pay for one.
Yeah,
And that's
you do.
what it comes down to.
Exactly. Fire MSBU placed on all partials equally versus the MSTU. I think I'll tell you a quick story, and I don't mind. Years ago, I was running for this seat against a gentleman, and I was in a place of business, or in an Elks Club, actually, and the lady at the bar says, I can't afford to pay taxes, but she had 3 drinks and 2 packs of cigarettes in front of her. And I said, ma'am, how many days a week you come? You know the story where I'm going. How many times a week, how many times a year do you get here? But when you dial 911, they show up. They don't ask if they pay taxes. I can't afford to do what you're doing, so I'm paying your share.
I agree.
I think we have to start looking at if we're going to look at all of our MSBU's and everything, and the landfill is my next one, that one's running properly. So when you look at that, you go, what is the cost divided by how many parcels are using it? That's the bottom line. That's how simple it is in my mind. And landfill is the best example of the correct cost. We know that. Less tires. I've had this conversation with Jay. We do give credit for tires, but only about 1,200 people are using that out of 33,000. So for example, when Commissioner Pickens buys tires, he might say, oh, I'll take mine to the landfill because I get an allotment every year. But not everybody does that. Only 1,200 people are doing that. Where I'm not so sure that we shouldn't take that fee off of there and say, now if you take your tires to landfill, it's going to cost you $2 a tire. Then the 1,200 people will do it, not the 31,000 who are paying for it. But we're going to have that talk in the future. Jay's looking at those numbers right now, and
If we got into the tire recycling business, we could actually turn it into a profit center.
Not yet.
not yet.
They're
but-
working on
Yeah,
it.
they're working hard on it, yeah.
saying it's-
Glass, tires, whatever, I mean, 'cause, well, sorry, I'm not.
No, you're fine.
Hijacking, but not yet. But
Not yet.
I guarantee you, the day that we can, Mr. Tilton's butt will be right up there at that lectern telling us about it, because he wants to do it, but it's just not there yet.
I've talked to a couple of companies, one up in Tennessee and one in the Northwest, that would be willing to come down here and take a look at it as well. There's money in it, because it depends on how small you get the chunks down to. And that's where the money comes in.
Get Mr. Tilton, because he's looking
a
for a
PPP.
solution.
Yeah, if you just call Mr. Jay and
I've
talk
talked
to
to
him
Dave,
about,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay, insurance costs, the same thing. We have staff involved in that, and we don't put that out as a cost to the employees, and we need to do that. And I'd like for you to add one more thing to it that I forgot, inmate crew. I've had this talk with Mr. Troxel. What we're doing now is we're paying an annual fee for an inmate crew, and we're not getting our money's worth. They're not showing up, they're unavailable to show up. It's a $50,000 a year cost associated, not counting the truck and all that, but it's about $50,000. So inmate crews aren't cheap. But I think, per crew. But I think if they show up, then they get paid, they submit an invoice, and they get paid. If they don't show up, they don't submit an invoice, and they don't get paid. And I think we need to have that talk going forward. I don't think it's going to change the conversation at all as far as getting a contract. But for us saying, okay, here's $50,000, and they go, well, we can't show up this week, we're not getting our money's worth. And the taxpayers aren't. And believe me, your phone rings like mine does. Why aren't the inmates out there picking up garbage? Why aren't the inmates out there painting bills? Why aren't the inmates? You don't have them. That's,
I think part of the pushback you're gonna get is they have to fully fund that position, whether we use them or not. You know, and they don't work in inclement weather, but, you know, everybody else has to, but
I understand.
God forbid you put a prisoner out there on a cold day or a day that's excessively hot.
Next item is the debt. And the clerk of the court, Matt Reynolds, said the other day that he's looking into refinancing some of our debt. I would encourage on the jail and the water and sewer plant to shorten the notes in years and lesser the interest rate. Those debts on the jail are way out there.
Think?
We're going to be building a new jail before we get that debt paid off almost, in my mind. So it's quite long. Capital improvement projects, we carry these on our CAFR. We carry them on our budget, but we don't get the projects done. Palm Shores is an example. We've carried that one. The board's approved that to go through, and I'm not picking on any department. believe me, no department has not gotten with, not had a conversation with me about these things. But Mr. Troxel, you're new, you're picking up the ball basically, so, but some of these things we're bypassing. When the board approved a plan of action, we're not really carrying that out on some of these capital improvement projects. So I'd like to see that. This one's gonna cause you some major heartburn, and believe me, it does me too. But I wanna just say this, if you bear with me for a moment before you kill me. Commissioner involvement in work projects in district and county-wide public works. Mike and I have, Mr. Troxel and I have had this conversation as of even last week. Was the work necessary? Yes, no, or maybe. My complaint is I'm a county commissioner, not a district commissioner. I look at the county as a whole.
Correct.
Example, Stevens Street. There's one street that was left off of an MSBU in my neighborhood, north side of Jewel Lake. 2 weeks ago, 2 trucks a day, 2 dump trucks, back and forth all day. The grader was there 3 days, fixing a road that frankly, I've had maybe one complaint on. Now, I'm not singling that out. I've talked to Mr. Troxel. He's going to do the research on how many complaints and what the problem really was there. But commissioners, y'all would love to have 2 dump trucks and a grader sitting on a road in your district for 3 days. I'm not saying this.
One day.
I'm
They're
not,
always down in District 1. I can't get
they
them.
were, but let me say this.
Didn't know we
okay?
had 2 dump trucks.
Again, this might have needed to happen, but did it need to happen today?
Right.
Did it, or could we have said, contact the private MSBU contractor who's out there doing the work anyway, and what would that save us? I think those, and I think when we look at that, I would like for Public Works to come to us and sit down with us. Well, millings on Oak Tree Lane. We all approved the millings off of Kelly Smith School Road, except for Mr. Adams' Act. They went over to Oak Tree. There wasn't enough, so they had to get some off of Moody Road. But it's still not enough. And the problem was, when I went down Old Wolf Bay Road, that Commissioner Goddard didn't even know that the millings were going on that road.
Old Wolf Bay Road, why?
That's gonna be.
There's nothing on Old
Okay,
Wolf Bay Road.
okay. But here's my point. My point is this. We've got to be involved in a while to say, is that the best source of thing? Because when I went down Old Wolf Bay Road, we were having flooding. You can imagine where the water was trying to go. If we did no drainage improvements, we didn't do anything
The
there.
water goes from both sides of Wolf Bay. and
It goes
drains
to the north.
north.
So,
And,
but had
they just
Had
made
Public
that makes
Works-
it worse problem.
Public Works, and I don't want to micromanage. It sounds like I do, I don't. But had Public Works sat with us and said, we're fixing to put millings down Old Wolf Bay Road, I would have said, not until you put a culvert,
Exactly.
not until you
Clean the
put,
ditch out all the way up to the
not
north.
until you put some stabilized material instead of putting it in the mud. Those things we need to look at.
Right.
Because millings are like a gold dust around here, and we all cherish those millings. I get a little passionate, sorry. So I'm not trying to micromanage, believe me, but as a county commissioner, I think we do. When we look at ditch cleaning in Boswick, Yelvington Road, East End Road are still not done that I was taken out there when I first got here. And yet, they were cleaning the ditches in Interlochen Lake Estates the other day that I
Been
had.
here 3.5 years and Yelverton Road still ain't been cleaned.
And they were cleaning the ditches in Interlochen Lake Estates on the hard road, which I'm not gonna say wasn't appreciated, but it's the dry season right now. Those ditches in Interlochen Lake Estates can be cleaned out in the wet season while we're doing Yelvington Road in the dry season.
Yeah.
Now, again, I don't want to micromanage, but I would like to see us as a board one day come up with a, okay, Public Works, what's your plan of action next month or the next month? Because I'm willing, and you don't know this, but how many times I go to another district. If I hear something, you don't need to do that here today. Go somewhere else. Go,
Mr. Chairman.
when you look at Boswick, East End Road, Yelvington Road, And I'm sure you got roads in your district.
Nah, his are all taken care of.
Yes, sir, Mr.
In
Turner.
all fairness, though, we need to commend Public Works
Yes.
on the program that they implemented where instead of taking millings and selling them or dumping them in East Palaca, we're putting them out on roads. That was a monumental change in the past. It's only been going on a few months now that I'm aware of, but I'm telling you, that's a monumental change for roads in Putnam County.
And
So
we
I just
went out-
wanted to bring that up.
If I
too.
may, though, I
Mr.
agree with
Troxel and I
Commissioner
went out
Harvey.
last week to a 20-acre site off of Kirby Lane. You probably don't even know we own property out there. It's down by
Where at?
Kevin Dersher's house, 315 north across
Where
100.
the old bar pit used to be.
The old bar pit, yep.
Cross
and-
100?
Yep, north of 100. Go down about 2 miles on the left-hand side. We own 20 acres fenced in out there, the old borrow pit.
Okay.
Used to be a
and-
clay pit.
And they put millings in there. And I was told they put millings in there, inside the fence. We found one good pile that we think is good, that community right there could use in an area. Now,
Why did they put milling in?
well,
there?
see, that's the question, Commissioner
Stockpiling
Turner.
it?
Why did they store them there and not fix that was way before Mr. Troxel, so way before that. But I was being told by the workers, we're dumping millings into that area. And then I would ask the director at that time, no, we're not doing that. Well, they did do that. And we found a big area that they did it. We found one big pile. And you're right. Why did you even dump them in there? Why
That
didn't you?
pit used up, or they still
Yeah, they
using
use-
sand out
No,
there?
they're not hauling anything that's completely grown up and fenced and locked and, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you. Expanding MSBU boundaries. MSBU's are the lifeblood for District 4. And again, I thank Commissioner Dersher for all the hard work.
What
But I
kind
would-
of MSBU's you want? For
I'm
road
talking about
maintenance?
grading, road
Okay.
maintenance, or even paving. Some of these areas were left off and not seeing growth, but now they are. So we need to develop a plan of action to get these into the
Expanding
public
current
hearing
MSBUs.
process. And taking that road off of the north side of Jewel and adding it to the MSBU that's currently,
How do you do that?
well, that's what we're gonna have a talk about.
Okay.
And,
What can it be done?
if when we come back as a Putnam County drainage plan, it's already been mentioned today a couple times, I think, and a countywide map and actual cost plan placed over Putnam County, including municipal areas, giving the municipalities their portions to do the work, a drainage fee per partial. I think that's a conversation we need to have.
Yeah.
Because we have got to get this water moving around our areas. Sometimes the water can't move, maybe the river's higher, maybe the lake's higher than I get all that. But I tell you what, and I don't want to just go out there and throw money at something in hopes to fix it. We got to have a real plan of action, and we got to have workers that can carry out that plan.
We're gonna have to, get somebody hired. We're gonna have to send that out to a sub. We don't have the staff available. We probably have the staff that has the ability, but
Right.
we don't have the staff available. This ain't a 5-minute study.
No.
I mean, they've been working for a year and a half now on easements and plans and whatever to spend that appropriation for the drainage in East Palaca. It's gonna take somebody a lot of effort just to decide where the water goes. You think that'd be real easy, but I'm telling you, it took a year of studying to figure out where the water went in East Palaca, the two drainage basins and the different directions it flows. And if you start doing that all over, you need to pick an area. I think the next bad area is out there in Ball Street where they're having all that trouble at Milliken Road and whatever. Somebody needs to actually study that to the point to where would that water go? If you dug a ditch here,
All right.
did whatever, I mean, it do that, and then take another area that's bad, and start working there, and start, but it's not a study, it's gonna take us hiring a consultant for those different areas is what it's gonna.
Well, and
one-
Commissioner Rawls, when you mentioned, when I was talking about millings on Old Wolf Bay Road, you can put a culvert there all day long, but if you don't clean out from Wolf Bay Road to the north,
Correct.
you ain't done nothing.
Correct.
You haven't, you've wasted a whole lot of time and money.
The ditch is full of
For nothing.
palmettos, it's full
So-
of oak trees, and Commissioner Turner's correct. If, my knee-jerk reaction was, let's do drainage districts, then you have a drainage district board. But when I met with Mike Nimitz, he said, you might want to take a look at a countywide MSBU. That's something that's quick, it's something we can put into place. give, and maybe still have, the MSBU would still be directed by another board, correct?
Right.
So we could have representatives in the districts, and, but I think it just solves two problems. Number one, it gets the drainage corrected. Number two, it puts money back in the general fund budget that's being used for that, where we need it in other areas. So,
Okay, Commissioners, I promised lunch at 12, but I think we can continue on if you don't mind and be done by 12:15 when we.
that's fine.
Is that okay? Abatements. Cost and why charge the county landfill cost on properties we do not expect to get our monies back? For example, the other day, there was an abatement, went out, and it came back at $12,000. It's in Larkin Lake Estates. It's my old home site, and we sold it, and it was sold again, and now it's being up for abatement. Property's not worth $12,000. So I think we got to find some kind of ways, if we're talking blight, we got to find a way to get the blight cost down where people can, I don't know how we do that.
So you can go across the scales and not have to pay for C&D, for
Well,
construction?
we're
and-
charging ourselves, and at the end of the day,
Okay, you're doing
somebody,
just for the county, not for the general.
and at the end of the day, somebody stands here with a $100,000 fine, and we're reducing that, but we're keeping the abatement cost. But in some of these really, really unrealistic ones, it's not going to happen. And we're gonna have blight, and you're gonna drive by that blight every day, because, and then people are gonna say, why don't you get rid of the blight? It's a $12,000 price tag. That's why we're not getting rid of the blight, because the county can't afford. We have a $25,000 budget for abatements. We're gonna use half of it up in
I
one.
think you should also consider the private sector.
I don't know that to be a
25,
correct, yeah, but we got all these sales, all these
Yeah, we do,
properties
we
we've
do.
been dumping back in that
Yeah.
fund.
Yeah, we do.
There's a lot more money in there than there was. I think there's 100,000 plus, and they're still putting all the different monies in there. Every time we sell surplus property, all that money goes back into that,
But when abatement is,
beautification fund or abatement fund, whatever you call it,
Right.
but it's for doing what you're talking
but
about.
when it's $12,000 versus $1,200, that's a bigger conversation. Mr. Adams had it.
Yeah, so I think it needs to stay, and I think that we do need to not be afraid to abate those type properties, because the cost benefit would be when those properties resell and someone builds a home. You're a lot less likely to build a home next to a property that needs to be abated. So that $12,000 and 3 homes might get built on that road because they don't purchase on that road because that property's there. That may cover that in the first 2 years.
Good point. Mr. Suggs, you want to say?
No, sir, between Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Turner, my
Okay.
comment was.
Citizens
thank you.
Committee. Last time I was chairman, we did make a stab at this, but we reduced the number of some of those committees then. I'd like for us to look at that now. All committees are required to report to the BOCC with minutes, Zooms, and recordings, whatever, for transparency. Have the ability to remove people, that has been talked about today for certain reasons. Restructuring and/or structure, example, Economic Committee overseeing any committee deemed economic drivers of the county, and form a blue ribbon county government oversight committee. I think we could probably do some of these things. It's a big bite of the apple, but I would like to look at that. MSBU pilot programs, we've had this conversation at this diocese before, not to this extent, but maybe Commissioner Rawls, when you're in Boswick and you're talking to the people there, and I can't remember the road that you were working on, if the county had some seed money that we could help them create a MSBU, if we said, if you're really serious about it, Commissioner Turner in your district in Sportsman Harbor, I know that not Sportsman Harbor, and Fishermen and all that area, we have kicked that around too. But maybe that's a possibility. And I want to go to Melrose Landing because those people have reached out to me, the homeowners association there. And a prior commissioner, when that big pot of money got done for the paving projects in the county, Melrose Landing was one of them. But probably most people in the county don't know where Melrose Landing is. It's at the end of Baden-Powell Road to the north by the Boy Scout camp. It's a little kind of fly-in community. It's not private. But they realize that the county's never going to pave any more roads in there unless they do something to help themselves. And I think that's exciting to hear as a commissioner. That's exciting to hear that they want to help themselves. And I think maybe this coming budget season, if we can say, we're going to put some monies up for you. We're going to help you get this started.
We used to do that.
We used to do it.
We would do up to 50%.
Right, but I think we could have that conversation, move forward, and look at that. Next, surplus land, county-owned land, land that the county owns, identify which we have them, why we have them, list future plans for them. If none, sell them, and list an agent that can help inventory and sell through an RFQ or RFP process. Maybe identify future parks. For example, the Borrow Pit out there on Kirby Lane, you're not going to get 20 acres again ever. If we sell it, we're not going to get it. But the ball fields in Interlaken off of Twin Lakes Road we're fixing to pave, were an old clay pit. And the Corps of Engineers came in there and they volunteered with Charles Comeau, who worked for Altel at the time. And they pretty much learned to drive bulldozers and pans and things like that to develop a park. And now there's a park there. So I think we need to look at, is this 20 acres worth something to us? Maybe, possibly. If it is worth something to us, then let's have the conversation of what it might be worth. Or we set it into a conservation area in hopes that we can use it in the future.
Or if we decide we don't want to, sell it.
Or sell it. And keep some lands. We're currently doing that with some of the lands that we're identifying for drainage. I know we're actively doing that, and I'm personally involved in that. But it could be for storage. For example, like Mike and I, when we found, Mr. Troxel and I found those millings last week, you know, we got a pit out in the west end on the north side that we could store items in, and we know it's there when we do. Port Authority.
Talk to me.
BOC hire an executive director, paid out of Port Authority money.
Really?
Please. The director will be right in the office and all items needed to do their work. That person will answer to the BOCC with a 3-year contract, quarterly review, and annual performance measures. Clean up and identify Port Authority property, business park appearance, marketing our property, expansion of our port property. Next one, I've talked to Julianne about this. Now, nobody's in the dark on any of these. Ads in the paper. I feel like we spend an awful lot of money, maybe I'm wrong, with public notices, and maybe we can or can't, but maybe we buy a half-page ad in the local papers. We list all the public notices, all the bids, all the meeting announcements, committee meetings, et cetera. And if we don't have any, then we put county news and district spotlight on those. I think it will drive down the cost, it'll highlight our achievements, and it'll bring more transparency.
Why don't we just do that right now by consensus?
We're gonna get to that. We're gonna, not today. Agenda items. This one's is a stickler for me, and it's something that I think we're gonna have to look at. The legislators look at this, and they do it. A one-page BOC rule document. Agenda items come to a workshop first, exception is emergency. Public has to seek a commissioner to agenda an item. Example, a member of the public comes and shares their 3-minute concern with a commissioner, and a commissioner says, I agree. Then we take it to a workshop where 3 votes move it to the agenda. Then staff can work on it as directed by the BOCC and correct our website. Currently, there's a button on our website that if somebody wants to be an agenda, then it goes, and staff is wondering why are we putting this on the agenda?
That's now?
That's currently happening.
Somebody can hit a button and just put any item on the agenda?
They can request an agenda item. If you look on our website, they can request that now. But then staff is left to this, and I know you want to talk, and I'll get to you. Staff is left to wondering, what's the agenda item? Why is the purpose of the agenda item? And sometimes asking me when it should be a board, like, again, somebody stands up and I want to build more boat ramps on the river in Georgetown. Commissioner Pickens says, I agree with that. We take it to a workshop, we discuss it, then it becomes an agenda. Then we commit staff to work on it, not the other way around, where staff is wondering, should they work on it now and then bring it. Mr. Sugg, you want to mention something?
Yes, sir, just clarification. There is a link that you can do an agenda item request. And what we've done since I've been here with the consent of the commission is we bring those items prior to the agenda going out and get the opinion of the commission if you want this on the agenda or not. I personally appreciate the fact that you're looking at creating a policy on how you want agenda items to come to you, because then it eliminates any issues with any ambiguity with any of our citizens. So I appreciate that.
And I agree. I think it brings more transparency. I think it also brings a level of commitment from the person that wants to have something on the agenda. And there's nothing worse for me to be blindsided by any agenda being taken over. I think
Today, you mean?
it's
Say
okay.
something in reference to
We
that?
are working as a workshop, and so I see Mr. Adamsack, and if you'll give me just a moment, but I do think that it's the citizens' agenda. And if it's that important, then the citizens will contact us and say, would you bring this into this fashion? And I don't see anything wrong with that. It does not eliminate their 3 minutes to talk to us. It doesn't stop us from saying, amen, let's move forward with that. And then you champion that at a workshop. Unless it's an emergency item, we all get that. Mr. Adamsack?
So I try to sell the idea of people coming and presenting to us, and I think it's from prior commissions to then this commission, even the one prior. There's still a lot of apprehension in this community, in this county, of people coming before the commission out of fear of being berated or cut short. And watching commission meetings back 8 years ago, that seemed like it was pretty aggressively done. And if we were to do this, that's going to even further put pressure on them not to come. And the only reason I say this is because I know that attitude is out there, and we have to try to open up, I think, before we can constrict. Only because people are resistant to come.
Okay.
Yeah, but
And I don't want to have a discussion today, but I think if they come to you, Mr. Adamsack, with something that really needs to be brought forward, you'll bring it to a workshop to have that discussion. And then we can move. If they feel, I don't want anybody to feel apprehensive. We work for them. It's not the other way around. We make that very clear. But at the same time, I don't want people bombarding staff and spending time on something we're not going to bring up. It doesn't make sense to me. They got to, here's the whole idea of this meeting
You
today.
got us. I think you got us. You can
Yeah,
move. to
I know.
the next
I'm trying to resell it.
He's a salesman, you're just gonna have to deal with it, yes. He's gonna put the product in your hand, he's gonna touch you 3 times, say your name 3 times as he touches you.
And I know how you feel. Many people felt that way, but they have found by doing business with you. Roads and easement, a minimum standard. We've talked about this for years with the prior Public Works Director. Not one size fits all. It's been said 66 feet, but we've had workshops where we don't believe 66 feet is the necessary. So I think we need to look at that.
Didn't we change that to 33? Thought we did that already.
Well,
It's possible to have a 33. Yeah,
Maybe if we put it in
modified
writing,
somewhere.
maybe if we just make a book,
okay.
that's what you do.
We have, with the old previous one, I'm not sure and look, some of this stuff, staff is writing this down. It can be policy. It doesn't have to, it's not a big sell. But, no, I don't think there's a
I
clear.
agree though, I think if we did have something in writing and, because when we're discussing roads, I've heard specifically that, many times are we using the Florida Green Book or are we gonna do it this way? And, if the Green Book doesn't apply and it's not gonna be used much, maybe we can build it in a more efficient way that's gonna be cost efficient, and still end up with the same thing. But I agree, we should have some.
Well, every industry has their little Bible of cost, if you will. And you have to kind of look at it and go, does it really apply? Next item is surplus equipment, since my arrival.
You say track roads and easements into the system, is that new roads or new easements or?
We have some areas, and Mr. Adamsack's area, for example, there's a couple places that there's people that still own the easements. If we don't, and I understand the cost associated,
Yeah.
but these people are getting to their homes using these easements, and if we don't help them take over that one day, we have people that would give us those easements, but if we got to have a mechanism of an MSBU set up in order to take care of that. I don't think we should take on more burden or more debt for the county, but I do think that there's got to be a conversation that instead of somebody putting the easement into a trust, locking that trust up and never coming back out with it, so the resident will never see any improvement, no new construction will ever happen. We pretty much,
On a road or an easement? Or both?
kind of both, but we'll
Okay.
Well, believe me, that's happening. Surplus equipment, since I've been here, that's kind of been a thorn in my side. Julianne and Carla were doing a great job. Nicole now has picked this up. We have a lot of inventory over there. If we can donate some of that stuff out, sell it, put the money back in general fund. I know they're working hard on it, but here's the problem. The reason this meeting started was because we always have our priorities with things we want to get done. COVID hits, a hurricane comes, floods come, and we're still seeing stuff piled up. And,
Chairman,
Yes,
could we add one thing to your surplus equipment
Yes,
list?
sir.
I would like for us to develop a program that when our Public Works Director decides we don't need a certain piece of equipment any longer, that he has a way to divest himself of that, either through trade or sale or whatever, after he brings it to the commission or to Julie or to somebody, i.e. the Spider. Our current administrator don't believe we need a Spider no more, so, or our current director. So if that's the case, we need to find the easiest way to diverse the county of that Spider and use that money to go buy something that our current director says he thinks he needs, which I think he told me the other day was a couple skid steers or something. So,
Well-
we
We already
need,
have that.
okay, well, we'd already have that
Yes, sir.
ability?
You have the
Okay.
ability to do that now.
So y'all can just sell whatever you want without bringing it to the board, or you bring it to us?
It goes to the board,
Yeah.
and then there's a process that way.
Thank you.
but we could use Old Wolf Bay Road going north. I wouldn't take a great all in there. I wouldn't take anything but a Spider in there to clean that out. But
Is that it?
Wolf Bay Road, going from the hospital to Francis.
I wouldn't take either one of those in there. I would take a small excavator and run it right down the road and
Which
be
is
quick about
another
it.
thing he's wanting, is
Yeah.
a small excavator.
Yeah.
Now-
So, I mean,
Right.
as
And-
you know, it's no different than if somebody took Jeff's company over or mine, they wouldn't do the same things we do, they would change things. Our new director is changing things and has a different
Yep.
point of view, and I think we need to support him in those point of view, especially when it makes perfectly good sense.
I agree.
His biggest concern with the Spider was the operation of it and having a qualified, skilled operator.
right.
We don't have, so.
It's such a
got
specialty
nothing.
piece of equipment, even if you do have an operator, I mean, it's such
Yeah.
a specialty piece of
How
equipment.
often you have to step over something?
Yeah, yeah.
I would love to play with it, but that's just,
Well, you can't
Okay.
have at it. You need to hurry, because it's easy to get rid of it.
write you a check. He'll
Because-
drive in his lake.
now let me say this, and I agree with that, putting the money back into things that we could use. I drove, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but I was in Benel last week. And driving down 100, down about where the mud pit is, you know what I'm talking about, where the sod farms are. And there was one guy on an excavator, if you will, track hoe type, he had a mowing, one of those mulching mowers. One guy,
It looked good, too.
one guy with cones, and I thought to myself, there was no pieces of material flinging out in the road. Nothing was happening. When I came back by maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours later, he had done a section that we would spend a lot of time on. And
That was a farmer-owned excavator, though, it wasn't the county, was it?
no, it was the county because they were right on 100. One
Saw
guy,
that myself.
one cones, that's it.
It looks good.
Because when I got to the county, I asked them. But yeah, I was excited about that. And I mean, here's the hard part. Us commissioners get excited about watching them mulch the side of the road, but we think we could take this back to our county, save hours, we could get work done. Why haven't we done this in the past? Yes.
Well, that's
I
another,
think
I
it's
got to say something.
Go ahead, go ahead.
You know,
I got to take a drink of water.
okay, the mulching head, these new mowers that we have, these bone mowers, they have mulching ability to hang a mulching head on the front of them with a complete hydraulic capability and everything. We need to buy one of them. They didn't buy one. We need to find it. If we got the bag bar and steel, we need to buy one of these, because when that thing goes down one of these roads, when it can mulch anything on the left side of the ditch when it goes up there, you know, anything less than 4 inches, it could just run over that stuff, and just, instead of mowing it down for hours and hours and hours, it'll hang right on the machine we already got. We need at least one to try this program.
You doing a forestry mulcher?
Yeah, a mulcher that sits right on the front of the machine. I think a 6-foot wide one maybe, 'cause it might get an 8, but I doubt it, probably a 6.
Forestry mulch in the front of a four-wheel tractor or a skid steer?
It's them new, boom mowers they got. It's like a
Okay.
4-wheel drive. Have you seen them
Yeah.
yet? Them new ones are like, more like they ain't a farm
The ones
tractor.
we just bought at a lease.
Yeah, that's right. We ended up buying them. We didn't lease them, I
Well, it's
think.
the same thing when if you put a
Oh, we
forestry
did lease them?
mulcher,
Okay.
if you put a forestry mulcher on the front of a skid steer, you could do ditches like the one off of Wolf Bay Road.
Yeah.
Get in there and it takes the palmettos and just turns them into dust.
Yep.
And it's efficient and it's a one-man operation. And I share your frustration. I went up Weaver Road not too long ago and there was 2 county dump trucks, the great all, 2 people holding signs. We had 7 or 8 people there, man, that just scrape off grass for a 4-foot piece in front of people's mailbox. And I couldn't figure out why we're even out there. But
Well, it may be that's what we need to do is buy a mulcher for one of these new machines, or buy a mulcher for one of the skid steers that are fixing to show up around here. We need a mulcher,
Yep, they're-
whichever way you want to handle it.
$70,000
We
and
need
well
a
worth the
mulcher.
money spent.
Sorry, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
you're fine. The next one is roads, naturally the dirt to pave, and Mike, I appreciate you starting and completing the fiscal year after they're approved. That's a big plus, because we've been doing them, we're so far behind, and now we're finally catching up, and your goal is to do them after the year that they were approved in, so this fiscal year. And I know they're going out, resurfacing the same, striping the same, and the mowing. Garbage needs to be picked up prior to it. We have a policy, but it's hard to enforce that policy, and I'm not sure that we even can ask an operator to get off the mower, go pick up garbage, get back on. We got to find a way. We talked about GPS. We talked about organizations like Rotary doing some. We'd be glad to do them. We just need to know when they're going to be doing it. That's the problem that we're all facing. I'd rather pick up one piece than pick up 10,000 pieces of garbage. It bothers me then. Mitigation bank, with all the property owned by the county, some lands could be used as mitigation for county projects, and/or sell some credits to be sold to Putnam County investors to support economic development inside the county. And last but not least, and I apologize, I don't know if I got the record, I think Commissioner Rawls had more items, but I just had mine in there. Use private contractors. Let's reduce the ability of growing government, allow and encourage demand that our staff use private contractors to get a look at these projects. Some people built these roads, as you well know, and let's set some target goals for percentages for them to reach these, to use private contractors as much as possible, and where it's
It makes
efficient,
economic sense.
as long as it makes sense, and I agree with that. So Commissioners, that's my report. Now what we'll do is staff will start dissecting this, looking at our strategic plan. We'll set up another meeting, and we'll start raising things to the appropriate task. Some of these things that we all talked about today can be handled by policy, and some will need to be changed by the board. Next item, Mr. County Administrator, any suggestions or comments?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, I have none, thank you.
Do we have any public comments today? Anybody from the public wishing to? I'm sorry?
You beat Commissioner Rawls by 1.
Oh, well, thank you for keeping score, and I greatly appreciate that. At least, we know one was paying attention today.
But wait, there's more.
So is there any public comment? Okay, before we adjourn the meeting, I do want to talk one quick thing. I was asked to go to St. Johns County, Flagler County the other day by a commissioner down there about doing a joint meeting with St. John's, Flagler, and Putnam about things we might have in common. We did this when I was chairman last time. We did it with Alachua County, and we did it with Marion County. Alachua came here. We went to Salt Springs to meet with Marion County. I think they're productive. I don't know how much production they can be, but the chairmans of the board for Flagler and St. John's have agreed to this. St. John's was willing to host it at the World Golf Village, as long as it can be streamed back to us. Now, again, when we leave the county borders, we cannot take any action on anything at that point.
Right.
We're just we're there to talk about things that we might have in common. So I want to ask the board, do you see any benefit in that before we go any further and making it, might be in March? And
Would it be beneficial, though, for us to meet with Flagler individually and St. John's individually and then do it collaboratively? Because I just see that, and I can already imagine what some of the topics of discussion would be, and some would be relevant only to Flagler and some only to St. John's.
You know, I think it's the other way around. I think if we met together and then we say, we got more in common with Flagler, we got more in common with.
Then have those
Then
meetings.
have those
Okay.
individual meetings at that, but the,
I think it's a great idea.
Well, I don't disagree, but I think that, personally, I would like to see our chairman meet with their chairman of those two counties and come up with some kind of an idea what the hell we're gonna be talking about. Instead
Well, yeah,
of
I
just
mean-
having a meeting to be having a meeting.
Well,
I don't
we should
like
also
that
include Clay
idea.
County in the mix because their regional growth strategies have a huge impact on us and it's starting to unfold. Clay County has that project to the north, that Governor's Park. That's going to be a big deal, and it's going to have a big
I
impact on us.
don't disagree at all. My thing is, though, I think we need to give our chairman authority to reach out to those people, or those chairmans, and if they wanna have a meeting, I'll meet them, I
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah,
But I'd like to know what we're gonna be talking about, at least ballpark.
I agree.
You know, and so, you know, I don't think the current chairman, I don't know that he has the authority unless we grant it to him to go do this. So this commissioner says that we grant him the authority to reach out to these other chairmans on our behalf and see if they would like to have a meeting, and if they do,
What are we
then
talking
what would they like to talk about?
I
And then
think- I
bring
think
that back, and
I
if
think
we
it's
wanna
needed.
talk about that, let's set up a meeting. But if we don't wanna talk about that issue,
We don't
then
talk.
we don't set up the meeting.
Part of my frustration with Northeast Florida Planning or Regional Council is that there's so many counties involved, and you got the big elephant, which is Jacksonville, and it revolves around that. I think it would be beneficial us to kind of not break away, but have a separate conversation.
Not saying it
Yeah.
wouldn't.
I
I'd
think
like to
that's-
know what that conversation's gonna be, and the only way we can do it is if we grant the chairman the authority to go ask him,
I
what
could
y'all,
click
what
off
would
100
y'all like to
different
talk
items right
about?
now.
all right, well, I
Least of all,
appreciate it.
Development and growth.
We all concur that I can go.
Yeah, by consensus, I think
I
the
agree.
record should show by consensus that the board has given you the authority to go talk to the other people and come up with subjects, and if they'd like to meet or not, and what we would talk about.
You have my permission to speak.
Well, I'll do that with the three that have asked, and also go to Clay County, and I'll probably enlist Mr. Suggs or his representative to go with me at that point. Commissioners, is there anything else that's good for the order?
Yes, sir, I'd like to say one last thing if I could.
Yes, sir, you may.
And I don't mean this badly at all, but I think that we should never have another meeting where we have a complete workshop without any agenda or having any idea what's coming before. This worked out fairly well today. It did, because we didn't really discuss a bunch
Right.
and what have you, and we just kind of got a list of what was going on. But I think it's bad for transparency reasons to the public. It's bad for staff, because nobody before today knew what was gonna happen in this meeting, nobody. So it caused anxiety, it really did, among the staff, because they were scared to death what the hell was coming. I mean, they started sending out plans and anything else that would try to give everybody the information they needed, but it caused anxiety, like it or not.
Yeah, I know.
And so, I don't think that should ever be done again, Mr. Chairman, respectfully.
I understand.
I think that we should have some type of an agenda. I have no problem whatsoever in any commissioner bringing up anything they need to under commissioner comments, or for a meeting, or for whatever that may be. But I really think we need to have some kind of a structured agenda, giving somebody the idea of kind of what we're doing.
I think we
if
just laid
makes
that out.
sense.
That's what we were just laying out.
Right, I understand,
Yeah.
but
I can see the point where staff would be a little bit anxiety about it. I mean, no one wants to walk into a meeting and not know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
let nothing,
But-
have no idea.
Right.
I
Mr.
mean,
Adams, you have a comment?
Yeah, on the prior thing, I'm all for meeting with anyone, whether it's just simply to listen or to go there and participate. That allows us to have discussions and hear input from other communities, even if it's another county or state level. That allows us to learn, and I think that's where the opportunity lies.
I agree.
And they can learn from us as well. So, and the agenda thing, I think for a first time, I think this was the best way to do it. That's my opinion. And I think going forward, obviously take from these items and then we agendize it. And I still think that this type of meeting needs to happen on at least a quarterly basis. And again, I do agree with you that after this one, since we have all of our things put out there, that it's agendized, and maybe add commissioners' comments on the end, so that if we have net new items to add to that based on what's going on that time frame, whether it's 3 months from now or 6 months from now, that we could add those under our comments.
I'm not complaining or being critical.
No.
Really
No,
not.
I don't think there's any
Just
criticism.
saying that we need to restructure this type of a deal in the future where it doesn't cause anxiety amongst staff. I mean, I'm just telling you, that nobody knew what was coming.
Oh, and I had the same kind of questions. That's why I asked you at the last meeting, are we supposed to come in with a bunch of supporting documentation, or are we just coming with a list? And Mr. Harvey said, we're just gonna be a list of
Whatever's
what you
on
wanna discuss in the upcoming year. I think it's a great way to start a year off. You know, we're in budget season. We should be discussing the budget right now. We just heard a litany of items that would be budget driven. So, you know, the sooner we start talking about these, the sooner staff can relieve their anxiety, because what they heard today was a list of, I'm guessing, probably, 40, 50 items. And some of them will be directly, will drive the way the budget's prepared. We also haven't even discussed our strategic plan, which is in here, which has a lot of stuff in it,
I
so.
don't think the anxiety came from what is what they have to do from here on out. I think the anxiety came from the unknown of what was
You're afraid of
fixing
what's
to
gonna come out
happen
of my mouth.
today. Yeah, so.
No, I get it.
It's,
But I didn't know any other way to do this.
yeah, no,
so-
I think, yeah,
I don't
because we can't talk to each other. That's what's bad about the sunshine law. If we could have all sat around and had a chew and a chat about this thing earlier on, we wouldn't have had to have the meeting.
You could have made your list, and Jeff could have made his, and Paul could have made his and sent it to staff.
I
and then
did.
On Wednesday
Well, I
or
didn't do it
whatever.
that way.
And then there would have been some type of an agenda, this is what we're gonna present. And so they wouldn't have showed up this morning, everybody, including me, not having any idea what we were gonna talk about today, so having zero preparedness. So I'm glad it worked out well, not being
Yeah.
critical,
I
and
know.
just asking in the future that we do that type of thing.
Yep. Mr. Suggs, you were up at the microphone. Do you have a comment?
Yes, sir, just one last comment. I'm going to follow up on Commissioner Rawls's comments. He's absolutely 100% correct that we are fixing to go into the budget process. There was a ton of discussion here today about potential projects and what we're going to be doing moving forward. And we're going to need some sense of consensus from the commission before we can even start thinking about what we're going to do moving forward. So just for clarification for Commissioner Rawls, you're absolutely right, but we're going to have to get consensus before we can start looking at anything concrete for the budget.
Mr. Hamza?
So how do we move forward from here? What's the next steps? What's we said there's several things on our list that are gonna take an all-day workshop. When are we gonna do those workshops? When are we gonna follow up on them?
Here's what I said at the beginning of the meeting. Staff is taking notes, I'm taking notes, I'm gonna compile the notes that I have, compare it with that. And then I like to look at it compared to the strategic plan, and then come back at a workshop and say, here's some things staff says they can do by policy. Here's some things that need commissioner attention. And we'll have another workshop, February? Prioritize all the things. And some of it can be done in the budget. Yeah, we'll get to that, the budget. But today, what we found out that we might have a lot more in common than we thought we did. We all heard things that we went, I thought we were doing that. You said that. I thought we had that plan. We heard things today that we thought was getting done that aren't getting done. And again, we are county commissioners. We're not district specific.
Amen.
And I look at the county, I'm in Boswick. I don't go down South Putnam near as much as I probably should. But believe me, I get hauled around East Palaca and San Mateo and God's country quite a bit. You understand that comment. So, I'm going to end. Thank you very much, commissioners, for your participation. Staff, I
If I
apologize.
could ask one question real quick. What, can we commit right now to having third Tuesday meetings, so we would have some extra time planned in? And maybe in the fourth Tuesday if we have to, because we do have a very, very, very short amount of time for the budget
I
to
think
have these
this will
conversations.
end on
I
third,
think
the
that
third
that,
Tuesday. Yeah.
I think that needs to be the chairman's decision. If he thinks we need to do it or not, he can call a workshop at any given time.
Right. And I foresee that for a
I'm
little
just gonna
while.
leave my Tuesdays open.
But I want to
so-
be, yeah, and I agree with that. I think we all need to be respectful of everybody's time and commit to a day. So if there's nothing else, this meeting will stand adjourned.